my gushing. So
Keep your hands where I can
here,
see them.
my hands are here, everyone. Yes, folks, welcome to the spoiler room. We have ventured down the stairs, pulled up a chair, grabbed my favorite beverage, and I will try not to be giddy tonight as we talk about a film that I've been itching to talk about. And I know before people say, well, Mark, it's you pick the movies, you could have done this anytime. Well, I wanted to pick the right time, and in full force month, which is what we are, it's appropriate to talk about tonight's film, Megaforce. And tonight, unfortunately, Scotty D, he is under the weather. He is with us in spirit. Hopefully, we'll have you on the show soon. Sorry you couldn't make it, Scott. You're the man. But tonight I have the other man here with me, my right hand man, the guy who's been here. He just keeps coming back for more. It's none other than the one and only Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. For those who are patrons of Mark, and you should definitely sign up for that. You just missed a half hour, or if you're not patrons, you missed a half hour of us talking Spider-Man.
Yeah, there you go. That's
so I'm riled up. I'm pumped off of that
I've
adrenaline.
got it pumped up from talking Spider-Man, and so tonight I'm pumped up because yes, 1982, starring Barry Bostwick, from the director of Smokey and the Bandit.
And Cannonball Run, right?
What did you say? Cannonball Run and Cannonball Run 2 comes Megaforce. Ian. Because I've been waiting for this like all week. I've been waiting for it. And I'm like, I want to hear how Ian synopsizes Megaforce. Go, sir.
Well, I think you synopsized it last week when you teased this conversation because you said, I think it was on Mike. You said it was the closest or the most accurate G.I. Joe live action film that we've ever had. And I can't disagree with that. But it's essentially, okay, there's the Megaforce. They're basically a supra-governmental policing agency. They got all these cool toys and tech and gear, and they're trying to stop this guy named Guerrera,
yeah.
Who used to be, again, spoilers, he wasn't on Megaforce, but he was close friends with Ace Hunter, Barry Bostwick's Megaforce leader. They were like kind of compadres, and they came up through cadet school or whatever, and then Guerrera kind of turned heel and became the head of not Cobra, and so Megaforce is basically them trying to stop Guerrera in a series of desert-based battles with lots of dirt bikes and laser bikes and old-fashioned tanks and newfangled tanks, and that's basically it. That's the summary.
That is.
Oh, and the main character. This is for a trigger warning for anyone who's never seen this movie and who might think, "Oh, this sounds kind of cool." Just want to let you know, it was kind of jarring. It didn't bother me because I'm a kid of the 80s and you saw this stuff a lot more back then, especially in things like Dukes of Hazzard. But Michael Beck's Dallas character, his uniform, like his gold lycra uniform, to show his personality, he has a Confederate flag patch on the shoulder. And you don't just see it once, like, oh, is that oh, wow. No, it's all over this movie.
It's hilarious because this is an international fighting force. Literally, this came out in 82. I don't think the G.I. Joe cartoon came out until 84.
Is that right?
I do believe so. Google that quick, right, Mark? 83. So,
okay.
So this is a year before G.I. Joe Real American Hero comes out. And they are an international fighting force that doesn't belong to one government. They're independent, and they each wear the patch of the country that they're in. Now, they have a diverse cast, actually, in this film.
Yeah.
But Dallas is the only one who's in the U.S., but he wears the Confederate flag on his shoulder, which back then, 80s, not seen as problematic as it is today.
But to some. I should rephrase that. Some people didn't see it as problematic back then.
No, some other people may have, but
yeah, it doesn't. It didn't have the same connotation. The national consciousness, I think, that it does.
Right there, we go.
It's interesting because you say that it represents the country they come from. I want to see the backstory of like the U.S., like the Civil War. They actually did split the country apart, and Dallas represents the South. This is America too.
This is America too. Oh,
TWO, not TOO.
yes, yes. And yeah, because last week, that's why I said last week we had motorcycles that shot rockets, and this week we've got motorcycles that shoot rockets. It's a perfect pairing. I remember seeing this film and I loved it when I was young, and I have loved it ever since. And I am a staunch defender of it. I think it's got 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, Mr. Rotten Tomato critic. I do
0%. I might have to fix that.
I was gonna say, you've got connections. They'll never take me, but
I'll bring it up to 1%, Mark.
I've got a guy here who's in on it. Well, I mean, IMDb, yeah, Rotten Tomatoes. The tomato meter for critics is 0%, 43% with the audience, but 0% on the tomato meter. Maybe because no one bothered to read. This is I had fun with it. Ian, how did your initial feelings with it? Did you hate this movie?
No, but I didn't love it. I think part of it is, I'm pretty sure it's Megaforce, but a friend of mine years ago said there's this movie called Megaforce that you have to watch, and it's like so bad and cheesy and 80s and crazy. And I just never got around to watching it, so that's why I was super excited. But when I was watching this movie, I was disappointed because it's not quite cult movie bad. It's not incompetently made to the point where you're like laughing at like The Room or something like that. It's just kind of a bad 80s movie. And when I say bad, I mean it's got ambitious. It's got ambition. I don't know what the thinking was behind it, but you get the feeling like the poster is, there's never been a superhero like Ace Hunter. So you kind of get the feeling that like they're probably thinking this could end up being something. Maybe I want to visit the reality where this became something. It reminded me of like a proto Buckaroo Banzai. This again, another group of diverse, like globe-trotting, super intelligent people with abilities who have this amazing technology and use it to foil crazy plots. My biggest gripe is perhaps a new millennium thing, because I'm so used to movies that show off this special effects and big intricate globe-trotting plots, that I'm like, yeah, they're just running around on bikes in the desert, and like there's just these, it's supposed to be really cool that I get to see a caravan of motorbikes driving for 2 minutes of screen time. Like, yeah, I guess. And Barry Bostwick, I love his beard and his hair. It's amazing. He's got the blue bandana. But he's just so hair. It's just so goofy. It doesn't look like it should be able to exist, even in the realm of fiction.
He makes it work though.
He does, but he's not. He's so sincere in delivering this role. He's like trying to be an action superhero instead of like a cheesy like Austin Powers type. It looks like he should be playing a cheesy Austin Powers type and have it be really funny, but he plays it straight. Everybody plays it straight in this movie. So I'm like, it's not bad enough to be hilarious, but it's just not good enough to be disappointing.
Well, that was a fun conversation, folks. We have a good night here. Mr. Ian Simmons, it's been wonderful. No, I'm just joking.
Here's the thing. I need to watch this movie again, because all of the expectations I had of what it was, possibly going to be, they gradually melted away while I'm watching it. So I'm like, oh, I'm just kind of left with this. Now, there are moments of weirdness, which I do want to talk about, because you've seen this movie a number of times. Maybe you can explain some stuff to me. But yeah, I'm like, I would watch a sequel to this or a remake when they could really blow it up. And because that's part of the thing is like G.I. Joe, you had the multi-ethnic action figures, action hero characters, and they all had their own abilities. Now, granted, I don't know any of their names, but I just like, they had the Native American guy who like Tomahawk or whatever, the black guy with the muscle shirt. He's like the bruiser. So yeah, it was very much stereotypical, but they actually got to do things. You've got a multiracial cast here, but mostly they're just riding around on bikes and they've got helmets. You don't really get a sense of their personalities or the differences. I kept thinking this is like episode 76 of a cartoon show that I've missed the rest of, and I'm just watching a bad episode.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess for me, 7-year-old me watched this and loved it because again, this was just before we got our GI Joe. You
Yeah.
watch this. This is like a template. This is seriously a temp from the fact it's an international group of specialists. They're all volunteers. They got the special equipment, the high-tech stuff. I mean, they got a scene in here where they're traveling through the headquarters of Megaforce, and they're like, "Isn't that a Meg?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's still on the drawing board." Yeah, it was. I mean, Ace Hunter's just like, we got all this high tech stuff that's prototype stuff, just like in GI Joe.
That's the stuff I loved because they're going on the tour. It's a 10 million square foot underground base.
Yeah.
And Tex says, we spent $40,000 last year on mops and brooms.
Right. But I guess for me too, that's part of the reason why I enjoy it is the sincerity of this film. This is one of those films where if someone tried to make it today, the tongue would be too firmly planted in your cheek and you'd be just winking to the audience or whatnot. This film is earnest. They put $20 million it had a budget of. It made 3.
Well, I mean, $20 million in 1982. Jeez. Yeah.
For a film like this. Well, because they got $1 million of that was the vehicles. William Frederick designed all the motor vehicles and they all worked. That's the whole thing. And this isn't CGI, folks. This is all these vehicles they dressed up with the rockets and that. They all worked. They could be driven.
And also they dropped a number of them out of an actual bomber, military carrier. And that's one of the things that was really impressive about this. They have some great aerial photography when Ace Hunter and was it Zara is his would-be girlfriend, they go skydiving. That one of the things that is really cool about this movie is, and we talk about this all the time, is the discussion around modern cinema and diversity and especially female characters. I was really surprised to see that they had a tough female lead who was of I don't know if she's of Indian or Pakistani descent, but this is something you didn't really see a lot of in mainstream American targeted movies. I don't know why we didn't see her name was Persis Kambata. Why don't I know her name? Why wasn't she in everything? Because she's terrific in this movie.
She was Ilya in Star Trek: The Original Motion Picture, the motion picture.
That explains it. I've not seen. That's the one Star Trek film I've not
really
seen. Yeah,
that's the one you haven't seen. That's the one she was in. She was in
She was
Star
the
Trek.
bald chick.
She was and she was in Nighthawks. She was in Nighthawks. She played a character Shaka in Nighthawks. She played just before she did Megaforce.
I don't remember her.
Yeah, she was in Nighthawks though. Because she played the assistant. The
one who got he killed her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, she played that character, and so she's in this one where she's a strong, tough female character until they didn't need her to be. It's 82, folks, and then suddenly she's kind of all into Ace Hunter.
But no, I mean that's the thing is I was surprised by not only the fact that they had a character like this, but they actually address the whole the kind of stereotype of the hero guy finds a woman and she's kind of got spunk and she wants to help out, but she's got to stay behind on the sidelines. They have that actual conversation. There's a few scenes dedicated to that. So I don't have a problem with them being in love because, spoiler alert, people are attracted to each other and they fall in love. And even if it's just, physical, that's fine. But, when Ace Hunter explains why she can't come along on the mission, it made total sense to me. And it's a credit to the fact that he is the kind of character he is, that he didn't like after he left that conversation, like, I hope she bought that. Am I right, guys? Huh? Beers for everyone. No chicks allowed.
Yeah.
But no, it's just the idea that they are this, again, this goes back to like the idea of this being episode 76 of something I
Right.
haven't seen. They are this, Megaforce is, they essentially work like a hive mind. They are so
Mhm.
in tune with each other's abilities and mechanics and fighting styles that to introduce anybody else onto the team during a mission would, potentially bring chaos and lead to the end of the world.
Yeah, and that's one of the scenes, and part of the reason why I adore this film is because of that. She's proven her skills, which is part of the reason why you can see why Ace Hunter is probably even more attracted to her, is the fact that she's got the skills to back up what she was saying, and that surprises Hunter a bit because, again, 80s. But you're right. They have that wonderful conversation, which is actually shot. For all the cheesiness, you get certain scenes like this where there's a little bit of music. It's shot interestingly because it's shot against a video screen, so you actually just have silhouettes of your two main characters. And he explains that about her not joining in, and her response is great too. She's mentioned that she doesn't like it, but she's a major for her country, for her military, who are the ones who want Guerrero captured. She says she doesn't like it, but she understands. And I love that scene. It's like you get this scene in here like this in this movie, and you're just like, wait, did we switch movies for a minute? Because you don't see that in a lot of movies in the 80s where it's fully explained by the hero why he can't take her, and it has nothing to do with the fact she's a woman.
Right. And, one of the disappointments, for as much as this movie isn't necessarily my jam, I'm not in love with it, but I like it. I kept thinking, like, in Megaforce 2, wouldn't it be interesting if, for whatever reason, the threat separates Ace Hunter from Megaforce, and he has to go on a mission with Zara, so that so they can actually be partners and work off of each other, and she can probably save his ass and all that stuff. That'd be kind of a fun trip. Like, they have to be rescued by Megaforce, or maybe they have to go in and rescue Megaforce or something. Yeah, because he's very much, they say they have this weird thing like, oh, we don't believe in rank around here, but that's the leader. I'm like, sure. But there are a lot of possibilities here that I think if it had done better, it could have really led to something. And I think you're right. Like, I have no information that G.I. Joe ripped this movie off, but like shows like G.I. Joe and Mask and Buckaroo Banzai seem to have taken this idea and really blown it out. You can do more in animation with like lasers and cooler vehicles doing stuff, but I think the seeds are here.
The seeds are definitely here for it. It's one of those where there was a lot of ambition and great ideas. Unfortunately, they just couldn't quite get there. But I would be hard pressed to find that this didn't influence the stuff that came afterwards, like you mentioned. It just because I remember this film being kind of a big thing too. It was talked up and because you had the vehicles and it was going to be the new action thing. I remember reading some magazines of that. And I was excited for it. I watched it and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I didn't think far, 7-year-old Mark, not thinking far past all cool vehicles and, Ace Hunter with the purest blue headband you could ever have that just bring out Barry Bostwick's blue eye.
I don't think that thing ever got dirty. Like,
no, he could be sweating and it still never got dirty, but he had the lion's mane hair. So like literally it's like a lion's mane.
Well, and also not that I was checking it out, but it was kind of hard to avoid when he first shows up, not in the gold suit, but in like he shows up for the date sort of with Zara towards the beginning. And he's like this, like the blue, navy blue with the red kind of breasted thing. His sailor pants, his cock was like its own Megaforce.
It was tight. It was tight. There was not a lot of imagination left for that.
I mean, that Barry had a boss wick, I'll tell you. Anyway,
it did. Yeah, again, we're not going too much into the no, we're not going too much into it because it isn't a really deep film, but there's just a lot of stuff that goes on in this film. I mean, you've got an interesting cast too. George Firth as Professor Eggman. They get him in here. Edward Mulhare is in here. I think this is just as Knight Rider, or maybe just before Knight Rider.
It's probably
Um,
right around that time. Yeah,
right
82. Yeah.
around Knight Rider. So he shows up in here as this British guy. And there's actually a wonderful scene in here I kind of dug where Zara and our general, played by Mulhare, he was Bryn White. They show up dropped off in the middle of nowhere in the desert. Dallas shoots the snake that was going to bite Zara. But they get into the vehicle, and there is a character, a black gentleman, who is in there listening to music, and he actually goes toe to toe with the general. And the general's like, "Oh, what are you listening to?" And I forgot what he mentions, but he's like, "No, it's Vivaldi." Oh,
Yeah.
summer? He's like, "No, spring." It's like he's the cultured guy of the group. But I like that type of exchange. And there's other ideas of that with these characters, to where they're wearing the patches of their country and they are of different ethnicities. But at the same time, outside of Dallas, most of them aren't actually caricatures of their nationality in this film
And I just wish there would have been more for them to
to
do. And I
do.
guess that
Yeah.
that it's kind of fits in with the whole idea of, like, there's Dallas, he's sort of the head of the organization. Not Dallas, Ace is the head of the
Ace.
organization. Dallas is sort of his second command. Everyone else is kind of like these worker drones who have to be in sync, so they're not
Right.
maybe designed to have these big personalities. But we do get these glimpses of them, and perhaps because I had GI Joe in my head, I'm like, oh, these are going to be important characters. Like, that guy's going to be a safe cracker, and that guy's going to, like, fly the jet planes and stuff. There's, like, they're just kind of there.
Yeah, unfortunately they are just kind of there. They're introduced enough. They get a few lines, but at the same time they're kind of there. But at least, though, again, and I'm looking at this through 2021 eyes, and I'm sure, but if you even look at it for a 1982 movie with this diverse cast, they have various nationalities represented. I am impressed that they aren't caricature. Dallas is the most caricature Southern boy out of all the characters in here. Otherwise, they're just people, which is great.
Well, except for the fact that, it's sort of incongruous, because you'd think that he's wearing this Confederate patch and he's got he comes off as kind of a hick, but he's also, really smart to be in this elite,
Right.
group. But he's working with all these, as again, a word we've used 100 times and probably will 100 more, this diverse cast of characters. He's not sitting there like, I was hesitant to join Megaforce because they had all these, black people and Asian fellers, but they're all right. I guess they're people too. None of that. It is this, kind of equality of respect throughout the team. It was kind of fun to see.
Well, what was also fun is Henry Silva as the villain in this. I like his villain too, because he doesn't play an ethnicity either. You know what I mean? I mean, he's as
Yeah.
much as being the bad guy, he doesn't, as what you might expect with the look and what his character is. You're just like, he's just a mercenary bad guy.
Well, and that's one of my kind of issues with it is
Mhm.
he is so kind of generic and not what I
Mhm.
expect. Again, I had GI Joe in mind, so I'm expecting like Destro or Cobra Commander. This is just
Right.
some, like, guy who, like, apparently looked like he had Fidel Castro posters in his bedroom. So that's a good look, but it's like, what does
It
he
is 80.
want?
Oh, come on. It is 82. So
Right, but I mean, it's just an
yeah.
aesthetic. Like, he's
Mhm.
just sort of, there's nothing really to him except he's got this, like, Bugs Bunny style rivalry with Ace Hunter. I don't know what he wants. He's apparently trying to take over a country or invade a country or get access to something. It's just sort of vague. He's just the threat. And more modern movies and even cartoon shows go to great pains to say this is what the villain wants. This is why
Right.
he's a danger to, our heroes.
Well, they breeze over it a little bit. His guys were crossing borders into another country and just doing random strikes as mercenaries and then going back to where they're safe, because this is back in a time where they tried to play off that borders are important, unlike today. You know what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
lot more. In fact, it becomes a plot point at one point because they have this wonderful. I loved how this battle played out. They've got vehicles that are stealth mode, and that they've got a skin that goes black at night because, photosensitive. If it's covered up, it goes black. I love that. So they get parachuted stealthily, and they strike the supply depot of Guerrero. And it's great because they're 3 minutes in and out, and you actually get a clock timer for how long it took Megaforce to go into this base, blow up their supplies, and leave. And I love that.
I guess I just, they're mercenaries, which means that they are working like contracts to do this kind of
Well,
stuff.
yeah.
If I had been privy to who they were working for, what those people wanted, like I had forgotten that they were mercenaries at all. I'm like, what are they doing? Like, it's not important what they're doing. They're just bad guys
They're
with,
just the bad
a
guys.
base and like, vehicles and stuff. That's fine. It's just that, again, I'm watching another scene where there's more vehicles chasing each other and stuff blowing up and buildings and palm trees exploding in fire. It's like, I get it, but I'm also kind of checking my watch. When we get back to Barry Bostwick and Zara and those amazing pants.
Those amazing pants. And see, I just love that scene. It's interesting because they've got one guy who is off in the distance observing, and he's letting, when people fall off their vehicles or actually have their vehicles blow up, he actually is letting them know, hey, this person's out there. I mean, again, a lot of great ideas in this film. It's not fully fleshed out and maybe not well executed, but they're really trying to go for something in this film. And maybe that's part of the appeal for me, is just the fact that there's a lot of stuff in this film that is superfluous. I mean, the bad guys are bad guys. There's a revolutionary, one guy who's apparently hired these mercenaries. He's like, it's for the revolution, because he's talking to Guerrero. We're not exactly sure what country. There's a country named Gambia or something, but it doesn't really matter because it's good guy. They're the bad guys, and you got the good guys. It's not called Bad Guy Force. It's called Megaforce. You want to know about the Megaforce? I think it's interesting. I think it's a change in dynamic too of action films. You look at this, good or bad, to where nowadays villains tend to get more screen time than heroes in a lot of films that we've gotten over the past 30 some odd years. The action film, it almost is the villain is more, it could created the more interesting character, and your hero, oh, he's just a hero, but here's the villain, here's the motivation of the villain. And here, no, we got the good guys. We spend a lot of time with Ace Hunter and Zara and the crew, and we get to see all their fancy gadgets. And then Guerrero has a fleet of tanks, and he's a bad guy. Okay, that's all you But there's fleeting moments like Henry Silva. Where I was going initially with all this is they go through their strike, though, of the city after the counter runs down. They obviously end the mission just like they precision strike, baby. So they go to their resupply depot, and while they're there, Guerrero shows up in a helicopter in this interesting, they don't nab the head bad guy there type of scene. And then Mulher's character and Zara show up, and it's because of politics.
Well, this is what I needed some help with on, because when Guerrero shows up, he and Hunter, they're like smiling and hugging, and I'm like, because this is the first time that we've really seen that. I mean, we know that they know each other, but I'm like, does Guerrero look different than the last time that Hunter saw him? Like, did he have a face change? Like, I thought he was the bad guy that everyone's trying to get. Why are they all buddy? I literally don't understand what's going on here.
It's the facade. It's the love-hate. They know they're the good guy and the bad guy, but they're playing it up like they're friends and buddies, and hey, but that conversation, it slowly dwindles. I mean, it's not executed the best, but that's what they're going for, is that there's the love-hate. It's kind of like It's James Bond sitting across from the main villain, and he could probably take him at any time, but he's playing cards with him, you know.
Right, but they're never like, hey, remember when you blew up that school bus full of kids? It's like,
Well,
oh
yeah.
yes, Mr. Bond, that was amazing.
Well, I mean, there's supposed to be there's sarcasm involved with their conversation there, and
But no, but what I'm saying is like there's a difference between the Bond and villain dynamic that you just described and what happens in this film. They're literally like hugging each other and parading around and laughing, and no one else in Megaforce is like, what the fuck is going on here?
But it's fake. It's overdone laughing. If you look at it, it's all over exaggerated on purpose.
Right, but it doesn't. Okay, at no point in history you wouldn't have Donald Rumsfeld running into Saddam Hussein, back in the mid 80s after that whole thing went south and be like, no, it'd be like, kill this guy. Like that scene goes on for, if it had been just a few seconds, like, hey buddy, and they're like, hey buddy, and everyone like draws their guns, but they're hanging out for like minutes on end until Zara and the other guys show up, and they're like, what the hell is going on? And then like, yeah, what the hell is going on? It doesn't work.
Okay, well, let's see, when we talked Eternals, you said, oh, use your imagination. So I used my
No, I mean, there's a difference between using your imagination and the logic of a scene. Like, if Zara had, Ace Hunter talks about Guerrera to Zara, and it's always with a twinge of sadness. Like, yeah, we were really good friends, and then he went off and he kind of turned and did this thing. If he'd been like, yeah, I mean, we were buddies, it was great, but then he just like went all weird and stuff. But I mean, I get he's kind of he's not a right guy. He does all this terrorism stuff, like, what a character. If that had been his tone, but his tone is always like this kind of like somber, regretful thing. Like, now I got to go chase them all over the world. But then to show up and they're practically lighting cigars and stuff. I'm like, no, again, I need some of those other 62 episodes of cartoon show context to get why they would react to each other.
I guess I always took it as like they just were putting up the facade. It does go longer than it probably should have for the facade, but it was also Ace Hunter trying to figure out why exactly he came to visit them as well, and getting to the point. And we do eventually get to the point when Zara and when the Bryn show up, because they say, oh yeah, well, you know what? Your actions are actually kind of considered an act of war. And Ace Hunter puts it, what he's like, yeah, and if we cross the border into your country, it's immediate act of war. And they're like, yep. And that's why, eventually that we realize that's why Guerrero actually came to meet the group, because he's like, yeah, you guys are kind of screwed. And that's why he felt, safe. I get it though. I understand what you're saying. I guess for me, I am, as I mentioned to Sajiwa earlier tonight, I am shallow as a puddle. So I guess I didn't quite need that. I just, we've seen that type of scene before where the bad guy and good guy both know each other. They're at any point they could have taken one another, but they don't. We've seen it handled a little bit more carefully, sure, but I mean, I think that's what they were trying to go for with it. And so I can understand where you're coming from. I guess for me, it wasn't that. I took it as they were just humoring each other to a point.
Well, there's a bit of a reprise of this later on in the climax where Ace shows up on Guerrera's tank. He's like, hey, and then like, hey, and then like, I'm out of here. And that kind of worked because it happens just for a second. You realize that Ace is kind of tweaking the bad guy, which is something that we've seen a lot in action films. And Guerrera's just kind of like confused, like, what the hell? And that leads into, honestly, one of the most amazing getaways I've ever seen.
Talk about the getaway. The 1, 2.
And just like last week, we've got our amazingly coiffed, bearded hero on a freaking motorbike chasing an airplane trying to get onto it.
And he does. Why? Because his motorbike flies.
It flies and he can make it turn.
I love how he's on it and he's just rocking it back and forth. like like a kid who gets on one of those fake motorcycles, with the joystick, like 3 years old, and you put the quarter in and it's only going up and down, but he's really, or they're just rocking the handlebars. I mean,
But he's so into it. Like,
he
again,
is.
it's so earnest that's what makes it just glorious. And the other thing, I got to go back and watch this again for many reasons. I need to watch this movie again. But the scene where, you've got the perspective of the bomber. Everyone's kind of in the hangar. It's wide
Yeah.
open. They're rooting for, Ace to get on board to make it. And he's flying. I swear, like, it's like a rear projection of
It is.
him, right, coming in, but then it's almost like he comes through the rear projection to come onto the set. Like, and it looked like the best special effect I've ever seen. I don't know how they pulled it off.
Yeah, I don't know how either, because whenever I've watched that scene, I'm like, okay, I get it's rear projection, but is he projected on it and then they placed him perfectly to come through? Because it's not like they cut to another angle and he comes back and now the physical motorbike comes in the ramp. He comes along with the screen up onto the ramp and he shows up.
Yeah.
That was another thing too. Like I said, there's bits and pieces of this film that are great. Like, they've got this plan to where they're going to come up behind the tank column, smash through the tank column, and get into their transports, their big planes, the C-50s or whatever they are, the big, huge transport planes. But one of them actually gets damaged and can't pick them up, so they have to actually abandon their vehicles, which I know it's small, but still, that was just one of those little elements where you didn't quite expect it, because the way this film is going so far, our heroes are heroes and just overpowering our bad guys. But here, they're actually a little bit screwed to where they have to set their vehicles to self-destruct, and everybody gets onto one plane. And I like bits like that, and the visuals. I mean, again, it's from the guy who's done Smokey and the Bandit and Cannonball Run. He knows vehicles, and I love the vehicle shots in this.
Yeah, I mean, like when you see those tanks, lined up, and there's that whole thing of like attacking from, they're expecting us to come from one side, so we're going to go from the other, so they can't like exactly turn around in time because they're big
Yeah.
clunky tanks. I mean, yeah, there is some stuff that works here. I just wish there had been, again, a modern action movie. This would have been one segment of the 45-minute climax that takes place in 4 other locations.
Yeah.
So we'd have the tank battle, we'd have the people trying to steal the jewels, the other people trying to like put out the headquarters, which is on fire or something. But this is all focused on one battle, and it just gets to be, for me, kind of repetitive just to look at. I was like reaching for the fast, like the advanced 10 seconds, because I know it's just going to be them driving still.
And again, I love the vehicles in this. There's a wonderful scene near the end as they come across the desert to help try to distract the tanks. They all put out different colored smoke, and it's this wonderful visual of the vehicles driving across this flat area. They all have multicolored smoke. And what's funny is there's an explosion, and that's how Ace Hunter falls behind. And you actually see a break in the column of the smoke as they're traveling across. Again, little bits and pieces like that.
Now, I have not seen F9, but that shot reminded me of one of the poster and the Blu-ray box art of F9, where there's like multicolored smoke everywhere. I don't know if that's part of the movie or if it's just like a design thing, but I was like, because there's a lot of this movie that reminded me of Fast and the Furious. It's all about the vehicles and stuff, and now they're all international spies anyway. But yeah, like the scene where they drove the vehicles off that bomber,
Point,
and parachuted and stuff. I'm looking at something real. Like they cut to aerial shots of like the stuff happening. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, they actually have
30 years before Fast and the Furious. Yeah.
Actual parachuted vehicles, and they're actually dropping them and that. And again, a limited budget. That 20 million was big for back then, but the special effects in here too, we're talking before CGI. So we get some wonderful miniature work in this film. I think the opening scene we get where Guerrero, they have the guy that has hired them, who's the head of whatever country, the revolution, is doing this speech, and it's actually a hilarious opening to where he's giving this long speech. You're like, what the heck? And Guerrero's like, yeah, okay, you're done. Fire. And they just blow up this wonderful miniature of this power plant. And there's some other miniature blow ups in here. And I'm like, there's some really cool model effects in here for sure. What'd you think of the special effects with? I mean, for the 82.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was good. There was some, as part of it, because I mean, frankly, during a lot of this spectacle, I was sort of checked out,
Oh,
so
sure.
I couldn't, I didn't really notice what was actual locations, like actual buildings and stuff that was on fire versus stuff that might have been miniature, because there were some seems like some palm trees kind of like on fire and falling over. I'm like, that looks pretty real. I don't know if that's just really well shot miniatures or what, but yeah, I mean, for what this movie did not become the pop cultural phenomenon that I'm sure that anybody making it wanted it to be.
Right.
But you're right, they went for it, and it shows. I mean, $20 million in 1982, it's all up there on the screen.
Yeah, the fairly elaborate sets for the headquarters that they get. I mean, Zara's room alone, where they put her up, it's like, holy crap! I mean, there's some production design involved, and I've mentioned it already, and I apologize for repetition, but it's the honesty with this film. They honestly are thinking they're moving ahead, wanting to make something, a spectacle, some big thing that could grow into something bigger. You could see that's what was kind of driving them with this film. A little extra trivia tidbit. This was part of a $50 million slate of films for Golden Harvest, because this was put out by Golden Harvest Studios, which aimed at putting into the Western market, because Golden Harvest, I think, was European. The other movies that this included was High Road to China, Blade Runner, and The Protector, along with this film.
Wow.
Right? Freaking High Road to China. There's a film.
I don't think I've seen High Road to China.
With Tom Selleck. That was the one I made a reference to in the Earth's Mightiest Critics group that nobody caught, where in a scene in High Road to China, it's about the only scene I remember. My dad loved this movie. Tom Selleck's character and his buddies, it's an action adventure film, a period piece, but they go up this huge mountain and everything. Like takes forever to get up to this mountain to talk to this old wise man for advice. And the only advice he gives is, the oxen are slow, but the earth is patient. And that's all he says. And my dad and I used to say that for years. Occasionally we just go, the oxen are slow, but the earth is patient.
I'm gonna remember that.
Yeah, it's a great line. But and in here, you got a number of great of lines they're trying to drop on it. I mean, you mentioned where Ace Hunter, we mentioned he falls during the final battle, and he ends up near the line of tanks. So he chides, he taunts the Guerrero, and he goes, I just wanted to say, remember, the good guys always win, even in the 80s. I love that line. Or the other one, which is on the soundtrack, which I own. I thought it was going to be the vinyl, and it was a CD, but I don't care, because I was like, I still got the Megaforce music, which is so 80s action, but I love this. I love this soundtrack. But there's also another phrase out here. It's all on the wheel. It all comes around.
Yes. Yeah. Neither of them, I mean, those are good, but neither of them compares to something that I want to bring into the culture at large, like global culture.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the kiss of the thumb that Zara and Ace Hunter do. Like they pull it out of nowhere. Like suddenly this is their thing.
I know. I want to do that like at work. I want to do that when I order coffee at like McDonald's or something.
There you go, folks. It's perfect for the COVID era too. It's like, hey, you'll
have to put a mask on your finger, but
we'll get a little mask on the finger. But there's two action. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean it's fun. Um, I yeah, they did make two live action GI Joe movies a number of years ago, and I remember neither of them being very good. I think
Mm-mm.
the second one was kind of better because it at least had Cobra Commander, even if it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt and the weird thing. But I keep thinking about like, could they remake Megaforce? I don't think they could because they would try and make it into Austin Powers. What I would love to see is they either make it into Austin Powers or they try and make it like this gritty kind of
Yeah.
modern superhero thing. I would love to see someone just remake this movie in the same spirit as the original, fun,
Mhm.
adventure loving, you know, taking itself seriously but existing in a completely ridiculous world.
I would too. I mean, this is one of those where I wouldn't mind seeing that either, actually. As much as I love this film, this is one of those films. This is what it's films like this that I would love to see remade properly, because these are films that had high ambition and kind of high ideas for the budget they had and for the time they're being made. So unfortunately, they couldn't execute it as well as it should be executed for that. But there's great ideas here that you could really do a lot with,
Yeah.
especially nowadays. You know, I mean, they even do this thing in the base. There, it's not all action. There's two major action set pieces, and as we mentioned, there's character stuff in between, but they do this thing where they show just how powerful Megaforce is. In their base, they monitor every, and I love how they played this. They monitor every communication from every military installation across the world, both good and bad, as they say. They monitor everybody, and they pull up a Russian like conversation, and then they go to translate, and it's just some guy talking about picking up his groceries. But I mean, that's another concept that you're like, that's cool.
It is cool, but it's also, it brings to mind some, real world, like modern concerns, because, like the NSA spying stuff from, 15 years ago or even early, more recent than that. But yeah, they're picking up conversations from only military installations all over the world, which is, complete bullshit. They've got taps on everything.
Well, maybe,
Uh,
yeah, sure, but
But I mean, they even
yeah,
kind of touched on this in The Dark Knight. That was, kind of
yeah.
Lucius Fox and Bruce Wayne had a falling out at the end of that movie because Fox is like, "You're gonna do what now?" It's like, "Oh, I only need it for this one emergency." Like, yeah, sure, Bruce, sure.
Sure, you got it. No, I know there's the real world but it's like, yeah, you think about it now, and that ran across my head too. Of like, wait, they're monitoring every military. I'm like,
But I'm
wow.
not saying that as a criticism. I'm saying like
No,
these are ideas for like 1982 that eventually would come. You almost
right.
wonder
That
if
would
someone in the NSA was taking notes. Like, hey, that's a really good idea, guys. What can we
fu-
do that?
funny you say that. Apparently, according to the trivia, now it's IMDb, but according to what I was reading, they actually at one point wanted to consult military advisors about the design of the vehicles. And they were like, yeah, no, ridiculous army. So they designed the vehicles. After the movie came out, those same folks were coming to them about the plans and ideas of the things that they designed
Yeah, that checks
they
out.
because it worked. The vehicles actually worked. I mean, every one of these vehicles, as schnazzed up and whatever they drove, they made a couple of specialized design vehicles that actually drove, that had the little control panels. And it's like, for the cheesy 80s film that it is, there's a lot of ambition and heart in here, and fun, and you can tell Barry Bostwick's having fun with the Ace Hunter character. I mean, he's all in on this character, but everybody is. It's one of those films to where, and I've talked about this too before, where there's those films where they try to make so bad it's good films, like purposefully try to make them, and you could tell they're purposely trying to. Their Megaforce has such just the spirit of, they are all in, they're making something big. That's what appeals to me, I think, the most before anything, is just the purity of this film. It's
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's my frustration with it. I love
Sure.
the spirit of the movie and the characters and the actors. I just wish it had been, you know, more or made later or made as a TV show.
Yeah, it would make a great TV show, which it did
Yeah.
later on. And a year later, it came out. It's called G.I.
Oh,
Joe
G.I.
American
Joe.
Hero.
I thought you were real like, wait, there's a Megaforce TV
No,
show? Oh,
no, I
damn it.
wish there was.
Yeah.
There was going to be a sequel, which is based off of this poster right here, actually, that was going to be called Deeds Not Words. But unfortunately, due to the poor performance of Megaforce, they did not make Deeds Not Words, which is kind of sad because I would have liked to see where they would have gone with this, actually.
I just don't know if that title works. I think they might have
No,
spared
no,
themselves some
it would.
embarrassment. Megaforce 2, deeds not words.
Yeah, it would have been. It would have. I would have I would be highly. By the time it got to release, I would, or by the time they got to the promotion material, I highly doubt that would be the main title. It would be the subtitle, Megaforce Deeds Not Words, maybe. You know.
Right, but you want to go over like Megaforce 2 domination agenda or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's true. or like Delta Force, the Colombian connection or whatever. It's like,
I'm sure there was enough cocaine on the set of this movie.
there might have been. There might have been just a little, at least in Henry Silva's trailer. Anyway,
I just want to take a second really quick
yeah,
to just talk about whatever happened to Michael Beck. He's so good in this movie, and this is like right in
right.
his like he was doing like this is a couple of years after Xanadu, and the Warriors was not it was around this era. And then I don't know what else he's probably been in a lot of stuff, but he's so fun in this movie. And watching him here, I was like, yeah, I actually like Michael Beck as an actor in the few things that I've seen him in.
He's been fun in the things he's done. He's did a lot of TV up through 2015. He did a lot of TV. He did some films, mostly direct to video. Before Megaforce, he did Battle Truck, which if you haven't seen that classic, yeah, where he plays a character named Hunter. Oh, look at that. I
Oh,
know, right?
wow. Is that how he got the audition for Megaforce?
I don't know. He played the Last Ninja. He played Kenjiro Sakura, which
Is this like a Remo Williams situation?
I'm wondering. I'm not sure. I don't remember seeing the Last Ninja, but anyway, Michael Beck. He's actually he's not bad in here as Dallas. You might not actually recognize him because the way he actually is in this film compared to what you've seen in previous, it's actually kind of impressive. The for the role he's in. So
I just love when we first see him, shooting the rattlesnake, and then he shows up and he's just wearing a gray skull t-shirt.
he's got this. He's got the beat up cowboy hat and the skull t-shirt. If, like I said, if there's one caricature in this entire movie, it's Dallas. He is so Southern boy. I mean, just a pinch will do ya. He shoots the rattler and he calls him. Was it a no shoulders or something? Yeah, it was a no shoulders. And then I love Ace like, a snake.
Yeah.
But he takes that minute, that little pause, like, oh, a snake, right? I gotta translate Dallas. It's like,
yeah.
I wish you. And the thing is, it clips along. I mean, this film, again, we're talking when it was made. This film is an hour and 39 minutes, right? This is the one time where I say I could have used a little more time, I think, to spend with the Megaforce, because there's a lot of interesting characters in here that we get very briefly before we're back to Ace and then the battle, which, those elements I get, but I would have just loved to see just a little bit more of the interaction and the characters and get to meet them a little bit more rather than on the battlefield.
I think that would have been key.
It would have been key. So if they ever, not that they ever will now, because we're we're 30 some odd years later, unfortunately, but 40 years coming up on. But I this is a film that I wouldn't mind seeing remade, where you get a little more time with the Megaforce. You could still hit these points, but just refine it a bit, because yeah, for me, eh, I don't know. It's one of those films that just touched me, and I love watching it. I don't get tired of watching it, as ridiculous as it is, as crazy and cheesy as it is, as wonderful yet not wonderful the skydiving scene is, which is a blend of rear projection and live action in the most weirdest combination you'll probably see.
It's like the skydiving equivalent of the Superman and Lois flying through Metropolis.
It's kind of like that, only you don't have her trying to sing. Just to let everyone know, no, you didn't miss it in the credits. There was no costume designer credited. Mattel, the toy company, designed all the costumes in this movie. If that doesn't make it even more strange.
Was there a plan to do action figure? Did they do Megaforce action figures?
Oh God, yeah. No, Mattel came out with Hot Wheels based off of Megaforce. There's a collection.
Count. No, I'm talking like, can I get an Ace Hunter doll with the hair and like preferably like the real doll hair that you can style and like the headband?
No, well, now you can't, but now that I want one. Now I want one of those. Damn it. Thanks. Now I'm gonna be like pining for one of those.
It'd be great if you could come up with the bike that he rides at the end. It could have like, it comes with the Ace Hunter. You could sit on it, and it's got like a clear stand, so it looks like he's levitating, and you can rotate the stand.
Oh, now you're talking. Now you're talking. That's gold. That's gold right there. That's some money. You make that now, you probably be able to sell it to about 5 people, including myself.
But if they're $600 a piece, it'd be worth it.
Well, yeah, there you go. The soundtrack, folks, the love theme that they have on here for Zara and Ace Hunter was supposed to have lyrics to it. Apparently, they were going to get Carly Simon to write lyrics for this, but she reconsidered. So the love theme is only an instrumental. But we do get that wonderful Megaforce music at the end for the credits. And you get Mr. Voice in the beginning introducing you to what Megaforce is. You don't need a whole lot of setup. That's what you need. International Special Forces Group. It was basic. Seriously, if you watch this, it is such the template, and I know we've said it a couple of times tonight, but it's true. This is such the template for G.I. Joe. I am really going to be hard pressed to think that this didn't influence it in some way.
Yeah,
Hasbro saw it and goes, we could do that only better. It's animated.
Especially once they found out Mattel was involved.
Right. Well, we've got to beat up to it. There was the brief 5-minute race for who can make a Megaforce type franchise. So, it's campy. It is so campy. It's 80s campy cheese. It's got heart. But, Ian, do you regret watching it?
No. And talking to you, my estimation of it is elevated a bit. I mean, I know this movie is out on Blu-ray. I might just have to, see if there's any special features on it, but I'm going to watch it again, so I might as well just buy it.
Yeah, and for me, like I said, one of the reasons I'm ecstatic of finally doing this is if you can't tell already, I am gaga over this film. I don't know. Maybe it was because I watched it at an impressionable age, and it had everything that I wanted. That 7-year-old would want. Boy, what you got? Nifty vehicles. You've got, the international group of specialists. You got Ace Hunter with that bandana. The gold jumps. Just visually and everything. It's like, yeah, it appealed to 7-year-old me, and it stuck. And it's one that I revisit every so often just for the heck of it. I fully recognize it all, its warts and all, and it's lacking. But for me, I just, yeah, I'll watch this more so than the next Transformers film. I've watched the Transformers films once, but I've watched Megaforce many times, and it's not just a generational thing. It's just it. Yeah, I mean, to think of what this could have been, they could have probably had something had they had more backing and or a bigger studio behind this idea at the time. Because could you imagine if a bigger studio had done a film like this, but better, better scale in that, come out with something like this before what we got later in the 80s?
Yeah, I think part of it would have come back to the script. I mean, if you've got more money thrown at this exact script, I think it still would have been kind of like, just a more expensive looking version of what it is.
Well,
but
yeah,
I just needed a bit more scale. I think you'd have to fast forward like 20 years. Well, no, James Bond was kind of doing this more international globetrotting stuff, but it's not, it's much smaller scale in ambition than what would come around even 20 years later. So I think you needed more of that forward thinking, somehow transplanting that back to 1982. Although, given what we've talked about as far as the makeup of the cast and some of the ideas that are presented, it was already very much ahead of its time. So who knows?
It was. I mean, for all of what it does, it was in many respects an unusual 80s film. for the type of film it was and what it was going for. It's an unusual 80s film for what you normally picture as being the good guy 80 film. So yeah, so we've talked a lot about it. I could talk forever, but I will stop. I will say there were two writers of screenplays for this. One of them also wrote the story for The Longest Yard and wrote a lot of. He was the creator of Hogan's Heroes. Albert Ruddy was one of the two screenplay writers. The other screenplay writer didn't really have anything, but he would write Cannonball 2 after this. So he did work with, and then he went on to, here's a link to Chuck Norris, Walker, Texas Ranger. The guy, one of the writers for Megaforce for the screenplay, did Walker, Texas Ranger and Hogan's Heroes. So there you go. And it's got some of those elements in it. So there you go, folks. So hope you've enjoyed this. I will shut up now. I will stop gushing for Megaforce. Though I think now I know if I ever do cosplay, I know what I'm going to cosplay as. So
can you pull off the bulge?
That I don't know. Or the blue eyes. The blue eyes will definitely be tough.
You can get contacts or something. And I guess maybe it's like some extra strength wintry socks, just like ball those up and put them down the front of your pants.
Sure. Thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. And on that note,
just saying nobody is like has what's going on, what Barry Bostwick has going on in those pants.
Because he's Ace Hunter. That's why he's the leader of Megaforce. Don't you know? It's how they decided who was going to be the leader. Anyway.
That's why he's the only one with the rank.
That's right. The rank's not for him. It's for a part of him. Anyway. All right, General, let's go.
He's the only rank they have there is Major Private.
And yes, on that note, it is now once again time for a license to shill. So please, Ian, thank you so much for joining me on my Megaforce trip. Sorry, Scotty D, you couldn't be with us, but now it is #license to shill. Please shill away.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel, so come over there and check us out for reviews and interviews and roundtables and all sorts of fun stuff. Sometimes I write things, and I'm also a Tomato Meter approved critic, but please don't hold that against me. And I don't know. I think the next time I watch Megaforce, I will write about it and try and do something about that. Ghastly. Come on, people. 0%. No, this is not a 0% movie.
I think it's 0% because none of the reviewers bothered reviewing it. Actually, probably 0% at that respect. But it's got a 49% audience rating, so it's not that bad, and it's got 3.7 on the IMDb scale for whatever that's worth. So
Well, what does
really
Metacritic have to say? No, we've gone
don't.
aggregator crazy in this country.
I'm gonna go to Metacritic and they're gonna go Mega what? And I'm like, yeah, never mind. You just lost all your credibility with me. How do you not know of Megaforce? So
Metaforce. No.
Metaforce. Oh, don't say that. Zuckerberg will hear you. Oh, yeah, I know.
Dude, that's the gonna be the first world you can create when you join the meta virtual world. Is
yeah.
you can be part of Megaforce.
Dude, that would be awesome. I would love to be part of Megaforce, but I'll never be there. But what you can, folks, is be part of what we watch next year for our special series. Hey, you like that segue, folks? The Horror of 1988 link is up for one more week as of this recording. It will go dark as of 11/25/2021. So if you have not yet, please head on over to Special Mark Productions, click the HO88 link, and vote for what horror films we will talk about that are from 1988 for our special series next year. We also got next week Force 10 from Navarone for our full Force month. We got Ninja month coming up in December. All kinds of great stuff here on the Spoiler Room. Welcome to all our new listeners. We appreciate you one and all. And now we'll just say a good night, everyone. There you go.